Welcome, one and all, to this week's episode of The Síle Show. A couple of quick questions just before we start. Have you brushed and flossed today? Have you subscribed and followed? Well, if not, please do it now, I say. Question number 2. When you brush and floss, is that a one and done for your dental health? No, it is not. You know this. And neither is the aforementioned subscribing and following the beginning and the end of living your best life with the Síle Show. That's a daily practice too. So get in there, just like brushing your teeth. Get in there on a daily basis with us. Watch us and follow us on our show pages. You'll find us on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. And when you've subscribed to the Síle Show on YouTube, keep the ball in play. Get involved in the comments. We love to hear your thoughts. Meanwhile, if you're catching the show on Spotify, give us the old 5-star review. And for goodness sake, share these fabulous stories far and wide. The people you love need to know what's feeding your soul. Consistency, my dear friends, just like brushing your teeth, trumps exertion. And just before my dental health analogy crumbles into total decay, let me whet your appetite for today's show, on which we are joined by Erin McGregor. So Erin is an Irish entrepreneur, influencer, and most importantly for the purpose of today's conversation, she's a mammy. She has done many interviews heretofore talking about her journey, her family, and navigating life in the public eye whilst trying at least to stay grounded and true to herself. Across all of her interviews, a common thread seems to emerge, one of independence, standalone entrepreneurship and personal growth. So today we're going to discuss her work, her perspectives and some, at least, of the stories behind the headlines, all in a very thoughtful and ethical way. Typical Síle Show style, I like to think. Real stories, raw truths, regaled relatably. And so, without further ado, Erin McGregor, the heartiest of Síle Show welcomes to lovely you.
Aw, thank you.
Erin, can we start way back in the very beginning? We chatted very briefly before we went on air about the fact that you were at a Gaelscoil. Tell me about what it was like growing up and attending a Gaelscoil.
Oh, wow. I mean, I didn't go until I was in 5th class. And my first introduction to Irish, really, besides An Bhfuil Cadagun with Dulgady and Letters, because everybody knows that one, the first time I was in June Queen in Kerry. And I was packed off to the Gaeltacht and you weren't allowed to speak English. And I was just dropped off and I remember getting a nosebleed and I was like, what am I doing here? So I had to learn Irish really quickly. I mean, my old brain isn't the way it used to be. So I definitely, would need a huge refresher. But yeah, that's how I started.
It's lovely to get immersed when you're very young, I think, in the language.
Well, I think as well that our names are all Irish names. So that's obviously where my mum and dad wanted to go with it. And, they love that part of it. And my mum actually went to the Gaeltacht I think it was in Galway somewhere. So she had a huge love for the Irish language as well.
Yeah, and it's really important when that's special to you to give your children the opportunity at that young age to experience it, learn all of the other subject areas through the language if they possibly can, so that at least it's not very foreign to them at a later point. They can go back to it. Like you said, you'd love a wee refresher. You're quite sure it would come back very easily, but you just wouldn't feel necessarily confident to speak Irish now, albeit that you were at an Irish school.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be confident. But it's funny because when you were talking there, I'm like, is it just in my DNA? Is that Irish, Colleen, Gaelga inside me, deep inside? Because, if you go to, let's just say, an Irish bar and they're playing traditional Irish music or a céilí, that sparks up something inside me, and I might watch or listen about our history as Ireland and something inside me definitely feels something real passionate about it. So I definitely think it's probably a generational DNA, probably past life or something. There's definitely a connection there somewhere. And I think that's probably in everybody. you know, part of their heritage, part of who they are. And I guess Ireland is definitely ingrained in me somewhere.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think we're all the same. And particularly when you go on holidays, you love to be able to speak your couple of focal, and even if it's only just to keep yourself exclusive from the other Europeans, perhaps, who are speaking their own native tongue.
I think as I got older, I probably haven't seen it as much. And maybe because, you know, my son is nonverbal and he goes to a special school, so language wouldn't be part of it. So it's probably not something that has been huge in my older life, but I would have very fond memories of the Gaeltacht and down the country. And like I said, I feel very passionate when I hear about our cultures, and I think it's not maybe spoke about enough or taught enough in schools. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really good. And I remember going to like Kilmainham jail and feeling like, I don't know, there's this feeling in there, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's our heritage. It's the story of us, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it is
yeah.
cross-generational,
Yeah.
and we own it in the fascia of us.
Yeah,
For sure, for
yeah.
sure. Tell me, what else do you remember about growing up? What was lovely and what was challenging?
Oh, God. I mean, do we have all day? What was lovely and what was challenging? I guess when I look back now, I would always say that I hated my teenage years. Absolutely hated them. I felt like I didn't fit in. It was really difficult to navigate it. I guess what we know now versus what we knew back then was so completely different. We didn't know about emotions. We didn't know about feelings. It wasn't really spoke about. And you had all these things going on. And even now, today in society, I'm going through the menopause and I'm learning things now that make perfect sense. So how I would have felt about myself as a teenager would have been really down to the fact that it was actually chemically happening to me. So if I could go back and say, you're not fat, you're not ugly, people do like you, or all those feelings that you're feeling right now that you don't fit in is because of where you are hormonally. And I'm only discovering that now. So for all those years, nearly 45 years, I did not know that my hormones were affecting my outlook on life. So I guess when I look back, that was probably one of the most difficult areas. And especially because there was no awareness about that. My fonder memories, I suppose, would have been growing up. I felt this huge urge to protect my family. So I'm the eldest. So I felt this like it was my job to mind them. It was my job. I guess that has its pros and cons. I guess I always felt that heaviness. Nobody put it on me. I remember, this is probably deep, but I remember like one time lying in bed and thinking that I had to stay up all night to protect the house. You know, I just had that overwhelming sensation of it's really important to look after your own. So, and like I said, nobody ever said that to me. Mm-hmm. I've really fond memories of doing shows in my nanny's. So wanting to, you know, perform and sing songs, and not that I can sing, but I really, really wanted that freedom to just be, because I was very self-conscious. And I think now again, being such an outspoken person and what people would see as the show glamour and stuff, I think a lot of that was to hide how I really felt. So if I talked too much, if I over-talked people, if I held the space, that people wouldn't know that I was consumed by fear and wanting to fit in.
I really get that. I get every bit of that. Yes, that relates. And I think it's probably relatable to so many.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's probably, so an element of rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, before you could understand what that actually was. Now you have, very unfortunately, you have experience of neurodivergence and you're learning literally on the ground how to deal with all of those sensitivities.
Yeah. And I think years ago as well, like our parents and their parents before that, like you weren't allowed to have feelings. You weren't allowed express you, men and women, you know. And I think for our generation, we definitely are the generation, I would like to say, of maybe the chain breakers, of it being okay to have these feelings or explore them and express them and wanting to change them and be a little bit more open about them. But what I love about the past generation is their resilience. You know, I often say, like, I see my mum in the gym and like she's fitter and stronger and she never complains. She just gets on with it. Like she'll never say, I'm hungry or I feel weak, or she just does it. And I think, you know, I admire my aunties and my mum a lot for that.
Yeah, the grit. There's an element of grit, isn't there, that we sometimes all have to pull out when discipline won't serve us. You have to have that reserve of grit somewhere that on occasions you'll pull up, but they seemed to have it quite relentlessly and limitlessly all of the time.
And I think they just didn't have a choice either because, I mean, they were in schools where, I mean, they got hit by a stick if, you know, they were hungry and I think things were different as well back then. You weren't allowed to express your feelings or like, shh, the neighbours will hear you.
Absolutely.
Don't tell anybody, you know? And again, I would say that's from our culture of, you know, you'll hear people a lot saying the Irish are begrudgers, but they're also our biggest champions, you know? And I think, again, that could come from the DNA of if somebody succeeded all those years ago, it was because they chose to take the soup, if you know what that means.
Yes.
You know? So I can kind of understand why they would feel a betrayal if somebody is doing really better, because that is what happened and that's deep ingrained in us, that we were betrayed, you know? So I think now as a newer generation, we're trying to figure that out.
Figure out our identity as a nation, as individuals, as families, and family systems and ecosystems and neighbourhoods and communities are all changing because we're more pluralist as a society now than we were then. So even geopolitically, things have changed and people are changing. It's all wonderful. It's all good, all going in the right direction. You make a very valid point about when you think back to your younger years and the challenge you felt to be you and to work out your part in the family. So you're the eldest, aren't you?
I'm the eldest.
And whilst you say there wasn't a burden placed upon you, you felt parentalised.
Oh, well, I just felt
that. You were sharing the role with your parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was real funny because I don't know why this came up for me the other day. So had Taylor, my first daughter. She's 25, nearly 26. And I got pregnant at 18. So I went to work at 15 and went full-time at 16 and then got pregnant at 18 and had Taylor. So I went from like asking my mom, could I go out or could I stay out late, you know, or her giving out to me if I like stayed out past a certain hour, to still having to ask her, can I go out, because
she had to mind the baby.
She had to mind the baby.
Of course, yes.
And then obviously as I got older, you know, things do get a little bit easier, but then I had Harry at a later stage. So I've never really had that full freedom or that feeling of, I don't think you ever don't feel responsible for your kids. I think you always do. And I think me ma will always say that, like, you worry about them as they're older even more. But I've never really felt a freedom of not worrying or not having someone to be responsible for, you know, and I don't know how to not be that, Erin. That's something I'm trying to navigate, especially with the menopause.
Yeah.
Because when your estrogen drops, your level for empathy drops with it. Or they call it the veil lifted. I like to say your tolerance for bullshit is gone. So you're like, I don't want to be this person anymore. But you've been that person for so long to keep the peace, or just because that's who you are, but you're tired of it. Do you know? So that's probably something that I'm trying to navigate a little bit more and allow people to look after me.
Yes.
I find that difficult as well as a
or even
as a
just
woman.
to look after yourself.
Yeah.
I think you don't necessarily probably need other people as much as you think, because you really don't want to outsource the care that is required to keep you feeling a sense of calm. But probably what we do need to work on, particularly when we come to perimenopause and things are changing hormonally, is our sense of how we can make time to look after ourselves, because self-care is other care.
100%.
Whilst you're still looking after all of these other people, if you don't look after you, you can't look after these other people.
But do you think as well that the reality is we're being constantly fed that we need to do more? Or is that just, like I've often asked myself, is that just my perception on life? Because constantly as a woman, you feel, or I feel, that if I'm not doing it all, or if I'm not succeeding at everything, I'm failing. So are we always constantly pitted against each other? If we're staying at home rearing our children, it's, we feel less than. If we're out working and juggling, we're feeling, when is it just sitting still and being? When is that ever really celebrated?
I think that's very bio-individual. I think N equals 1. And I think it's a very important part of the growth and expansion of any individual, male and female alike. And I think that it's probably not something that you arrive at as a fait accompli. I think it's probably something you need to be able to access, maybe even within every 24 hours in every circadian rhythm, so that you have calm available to you whenever you need it, that it's on tap from within. Then you have your power. You're not giving your power away.
Yes. Yeah. I guess I would be quite hard on myself then. Even maybe resting, I feel like I should be doing more, or you're lazy, and it's probably getting louder as I'm getting older, because my body feels like it's letting me down. I'm not able to jump out of the bed the way I used to be in the morning. That energy, that fatigue is constantly there, and that's down to the hormonal changes. So to battle that again, is quite difficult.
Do you mean that your body is physically sore getting up, or are you talking about your energy levels?
My energy levels.
So that's sort of your outlook on life. It's your joie de vivre rather than your capacity for. It's your motivation.
Well, it's funny because my motivation would get me through a lot, but as I'm getting older, it's like my body is definitely slowing down a little bit, I guess as well, I would have a lot on my plate with my son, and, you're waking up in the night. So I would have spent the first 5 years of his life with no sleep, and then obviously went into the menopause, and then that's no sleep. And so it's all of those things combined, and it's definitely a physical end, because I remember feeling again really bad about not being able to cope with my everyday tasks because my son would be awake all night. So with autism, or Harry, he wouldn't have slept a lot. So we could go to bed and he could wake up from 12 till 5 a.m. or all night. And some nights he would scream the house down and self-harm, and other nights he wouldn't, he would just be awake. But because he was so young, it meant that I had to be awake with him. So I remember feeling like a failure that I wasn't able to be motivated or be positive around that. And I remember looking into it a little bit more, and actually the physicalities that was happening to my body with no sleep was the cortisol levels was going up. I was going into fight or flight. My levels were as high as a soldier in a combat war, okay? But I thought that my positive mindset would be able to outdo that, where I wasn't actually factoring in that there was a chemical reaction to no sleep that I couldn't control, And it was accepting that and being aware of it that I went, oh, wow, I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah. And I think that's maybe where sometimes I can find a little bit with the toxic positivity, because I'm like, but is it that, or is it actually something physically wrong with what's happening to this person?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Take us back a little bit. I really empathise, Erin, and you do have your hands full. There is no doubt about it. So just introduce our audience a little bit to your gorgeous son, Harry. So you referenced him there, and take us back a little bit. When did you realise things were not as you thought they might be?
Oh, I didn't. It was so funny. So I had Taylor when I was 18 and Harry came along in 2016 after I met the love of my life, Terry, and I got pregnant. And again, both of us were a little bit older, not sleeping. He had colic and reflux. And I always remember when I would go out with him in the early, weeks, anytime I went anywhere with him, he was really unsettled. Taylor was a colic baby as well. So I was a little bit more aware of that than Terry was. Terry was a new dad. I had a very complicated birth in the end. Sorry, after birth. And I was rushed to theatre, etc., etc. So again, I lost a lot of blood. I had to have a blood transfusion. Physicalities as well, It would have taken me time to recover from that. But you don't really give yourself time as a woman to recover from that. It's not really taken into our culture. I see other cultures when a woman have babies, their families come to the house and they support them and they live with them, and they, the woman has to physically rest. There's stitches, there's all of this kind of stuff, and I don't really know if our culture supports that enough. Anyway, I would have been running on empty, but also wanting my baby so much. I remember when Harry came, it was like my life was complete, I had my girl, I had my husband. Well, he was my husband at the time, but my partner. And I had this amazing little boy, and I was like, he's my soulmate. But I was, again, always tired, and he wasn't sleeping. So, but there was like 16 years in the difference between Harry and Taylor. So how would I remember? There was no children in our house. It was just Taylor. She was the only grandchild. So I feel like subconsciously, okay, something kept saying to me like, are the other kids talking in school? I can't explain it, but I didn't feel that, right? So I'm like, was somebody trying to say this to me to get me to notice? And I'd asked in the school once or twice, and they were like, no, he's grand. And then I got a text message off my sister, and it was a big, long message. And she had just said, I've tried to write this loads of times. We've tried to tell you. We don't know how to do this. And my legs just went from underneath me. And I had no understanding of autism at all. And I remember looking it up. And I use this analogy all the time. It's like the horse on Facebook. You know what people will say? Can you see the horse? But you can't see the horse. It's, I don't know, maybe it's an ape or something. And then you look at the screen and you're like, oh, there's the horse. And then you can't unsee the horse. So that's what it was like for me. It was like the minute I saw all those traits, I went, how did I not see that? So then I realised then, like the stimming, all of that kind of stuff, I didn't know what any of that was. And I didn't talk about it for about 2 days. And I remember not telling Terry because I was terrified that it wasn't true, because what if it's not true? And then what if he doesn't like my sister after her saying that? So again, probably managing people's feelings, and, I didn't want any conflict and didn't want anyone not to like anyone. So he asked me, he's like, what's wrong with you? And I said it to him. And he was like, don't know whether he said, yeah, I know. But his reaction was so different than what I thought it was going to be. It was like, maybe he knew. I actually must have asked him that when I got home. And then I just spiraled. I was ringing doctors. I was like, arrived at the health nurse. I was like, please, somebody needs to see me. Nobody would see me. I was like, somebody really needs to help me. I don't know what to do. And that was really the start of our journey. Because I had, again, really no clue of autism or what it meant, or just probably had preconceived ideas. Like, the one that stood out to me at the time the most was there was this preconceived idea that people with autism had no emotions. Okay. And I don't know where I learned that from. I don't know whether it was the media at the time. I'm not sure, but it was definitely there. And I used to be crying. Look, I remember he was only a baby and I'd just come off Dancing with the Stars. And I was like, what if he never knows that I love him? Or what if he doesn't even love me? And that was really difficult. I used to like lie in bed and cry myself to sleep at that one.
Very difficult for a mammy.
Yeah.
Very difficult. And a daddy.
Yeah. And we both dealt with it completely different.
Mm-hmm. Did you pull away for a while and then come together? Or were you able to find your togetherness from the get-go?
So it's real funny because me and Terry have probably... I've been working on myself, cliche, when it wasn't cool, right? Like, you know, I stopped drinking in my 20s and, you know, I would very much in tune with like working on myself and trying to fall off the healing wagon all the time. And I think, you know, we're never done in life. There's always something to peel back the onion. But I learned over the years that me and Terry have two very different coping styles. And I say that's why we get on real well, because we have the dance that works. So I would pull back and Terry pulls back. So he goes one way because he doesn't want, in his skill, is he doesn't want me to burden him. And in my coping skills is I need to fix this and do this by myself because I need to do this on my own. So we would go our separate ways, and we can still do that in arguments at times. And we know that, and we know when it's time. You know, he's like, I'm trying to be there for you, and I'm because that's what you want me to do. But then when I go to you, you're like, leave me alone, and I'm like, because I'm not ready yet. So sometimes I'll have to process things. And I think men and women just process things completely different. I just think that's just the way it is. So Terry and me definitely dealt with it completely different. And no sleep. Emotions wise, I was all over the place. And as was Terry himself. So it was a very, very, very difficult time, and nearly like a blur, you know, because you're handed a diagnosis, you're left to find your own way in a world that you have no idea about. You don't know any of the terms. You don't even know where you need to go or what, like, don't want to use the word level, but you don't know where your son is going to be in 2 years or 3 years' time. So you don't really know where to start.
Sure.
So, and then throw in all your emotions on that. So like I was talking to somebody today about this, and I was like, everybody is dealing with it different because they perceive it and feel it different. So how they're dealing with it can be so different than how somebody else deals with it.
And of course, it shows up differently in every family with every child. There isn't just one diagnosis of autism and one presentation of autism. So it's bespoke to every child, how it will pan out for them and what resources they're going to need.
Yeah.
And as you say, there isn't a manual. There isn't one go-to glossary of the terms. Yeah. You just have to limp your way forward. And that
while you're in... And I remember one time actually when I said it on national television and I used the word grief and I got heavily trolled after it, right? And I was so protective over him because I've been subjected to that a few times in my career. And
Can I just check, Erin, you were trolled for saying that you were grieving, was it?
Yeah, I use the word grief.
Okay. That there is a grieving regarding.
Yes.
Yes.
And people seem to really not like that I use that word. And I get it. I get that, you know, the autism community felt like they were misrepresented for times. And
I understand. I misunderstood you. I
no,
understand
well, I
what you
don't
mean.
actually.
Yes.
I don't think that's why they were trolling me. I think they just probably wanted to troll me. Or I think people, the ultimate grief in my eyes is obviously losing somebody to death. Okay. But I think, again, we're only learning as we go on that there's grief in other areas. So I think people couldn't understand that I was using the word grief in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe, I'm just surmising, that these people thought, oh, because it's a death, you know, and they were judging me up against somebody that maybe lost somebody.
Mm-hmm. I get that. There's a disenfranchised grief with anything that doesn't turn out the way you thought it might. So whether, you know, it's something
Job,
that registers, of
divorce.
course, yes, and
Yeah.
all sorts of loss. And even when you're in a very young romantic relationship and you're not of an age where the older people in your community might think you should even be considering that it's an important or a special relationship. If that relationship breaks up and you're not ready for it to break up, there's a disenfranchised grief with that.
I never knew that was the word, you know. And again, like I said, everybody deals with things differently. Yeah. And for me, how can I ever give you the words of how deep it is that I love him? Mm-hmm. There is no word to tell you the terror of thinking what's going to happen to him when I die.
It's very primal in a mother.
When I tell you I have got on my hands and knees from the pit of my solar plex, it's again, primal. And thank you for saying that, because I've never heard that word before.
It's
and
primal.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
If I could tell you how much I love him and how much heartbroken I am that he may face a life that is very difficult for him, how can I express that? It's not safe for me to do that in this world because it's not accepted, it's not allowed, it's judged. But that's how I feel. Mm-hmm. And I suppose the reason, again, it goes back to why I talk about things the way I talk to, or why I let these emotions out so much, is because it is so important, because this is real and this is happening. And that is how I feel. Mm-hmm. Because people would say, I wouldn't want to change him. You wouldn't change him for the world. I would never change my son for the world. But would I take every single obstacle or panic attack, or the fact he can't tell me he's in pain, or the fact that he self-harms, or the fact that he wants to play with kids but he can't go into the areas they're playing, or he can't dress himself, or he can't hold a knife and fork? If I could take that away from him and give him my voice, I would do that in a heartbeat. And I know that's really controversial for people, and I get that, and that's okay where they're at. But if I could make his life better, I would give mine for his. Mm-hmm. That's how much I love him.
Yeah. I'm really feeling your pain, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's candid and kind of you to share it in that way, because there will be so many people who'll hear you expressing it in that way, and it might just give them the permission perhaps to express their grief as well, if that's how they choose to see it. And, you know, all of those things that are emotional are subjective. It's not anybody else's business really to presume that they can be objective when it's somebody else's feelings. If you say, I feel, it's your business.
Yeah. And I think like Terry would feel different, you know, and I think he would have different views on things. And like I remember going to the airport one time, I got this into my head that I was going to go and bring Harry away because I really, really wanted him to interact with his cousins. I really wanted him to interact with his cousins and build a bond with them, because I really, really, maybe selfishly, wanted to know that he would be included. And when I die, not if, because I use if as if I'm not going to die, that one of the kids, maybe nature, will be to allow him live with them and mind him. Like, my instinct would be to protect my family, to be loyal to my family, to love people, that's my instinct. So maybe selfishly, I want that for him, you know? So I flew over on my own. Terry was working and I flew by myself. And I documented going through the airport, and I documented the services for families with disabilities and maybe how to navigate it, because I had no clue. Okay, no clue of the sun yard, the sunflower lanyard. I'd no clue of the sensory room. I'd no even clue of the disabled lane. Okay, so I had no understanding. So I documented it. I documented the buggy that he uses, because even though he's nearly 10, he still likes to be in the buggy because he feels safe. Mm-hmm. He knows it. So when he's scared going somewhere and I can't get him in somewhere, I will, after about half an hour, get him into the buggy.
It's a sensory diet thing.
Yeah, and he knows it.
Yes.
He's compacted, hood is over, and he's like, I know this, I'm safe, okay? So, and somehow the papers got it, and stupidly I looked at the comments. It's a form of self-sabotage or something. It's like, don't pick the spot, Erin, don't pick the spot. And I was just horrified at the comments. I just couldn't believe it. But also I was really vulnerable. I was really emotional, because while I wanted to go over onto the holiday and I wanted to mix, I was in a hotel and he wouldn't go down to the pool. Everyone else was playing in the normal pool and he was in the baby pool. He had to have a nappy on. And some people don't like when I talk about this kind of stuff because they feel like it's an invasion of his privacy. And I understand that, but this is what I'm trying to tell people, that this is what we face. So he had an accident in the nappy, and that affected the pool. And I was still trying to accept that this was our reality, that this little boy was in a buggy while the other kids were playing football and talking and asking for a drink and pinting. And he was so sensory that he couldn't stay downstairs at the pool. So I was confined to the bedroom a lot. So I was still navigating that. And Terry came over to meet me. And again, I had that primal cry. And he said to me, "You're grieving, Erin, and you need to talk to somebody." And I was so angry because I was like, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. How is it going to change? And I guess I just wanted to accept my feelings on it, because I felt very gaslit by society, by the government, by communities that didn't really understand what our autism community goes through. And when I say communities, I'm maybe talking about like social media stuff, And I was definitely in pain because I loved him so much.
And I think, Erin, it's justified enough to tell your own story from your own perspective without even feeling the need to speak for the whole community. Because I think when it comes to a mother and her child and the pain that she feels for whatever reason, it's quite enough if you feel it, to feel it.
Yeah.
You don't have to justify it based on another benchmark.
Yeah. And I guess it's only when I sit here and I talk about it or somebody asks me about it that I'll be able to like recall certain things, But I definitely have come a lot further in that, Mm-hmm. Your lows can be low, but you seem to be able to go, this is a roller coaster and we're on the ride, and it moves, okay? And you kind of, it's not going to last forever and you're going to be onto something else, right? So He now isn't in a nappy in a swimming pool, you know. He loves swimming. We go to that actual hotel. We've been there 3 times now. And last year we went in May and he went to the disco. He actually went to the disco, you know. And that was huge for us.
Of course.
Because the first time we went to the disco, me and my mum brought my niece and my nephew, and Harry was covered in his sensory blanket and his buggy, and he had his phone and his ear defenders, you know, and I was trying to navigate both. But also as well, it's really important, I think people don't realise this, is it's really important that we encourage and support and expose Harry to the outside world per se. A lot of the times is just the functional part of it, okay? He can't live his life unless he stays or goes institutionalized and doesn't participate in the real world, okay? So even let's say as an older man, he will have to go to the doctor. He will have to go to the hospital. He will have to go to the dentist. He will have to go maybe to the post office. Even those bare minimums.
Life skills.
Okay? So if we don't expose him to those kind of things, well, then that means that he won't be able to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of things, and this is probably my favourite part of the journey. And it's still one that we're trying to navigate. But I always say this to him: son, trust your ma. She'll never make you do something that you won't love. I promise you, you will love this. Trust me. So what happens is when he goes somewhere new, or even somewhere he has loved before, and he gets there, he's like, not today. It's too sensory, there's too many people, it's too noisy. I'm not sure what it is, because obviously he can't tell me, okay? So I use my instinct with Harry so much. I understand at a definitely deeper level to him. His his I can, I'm very good. It's like a new baby where I'm really in tune with that. So there will be times where he won't want to go in somewhere because his anxiety is really high, or like I said, I can't articulate for him what it really is, but it's what I'm seeing.
He can't regulate on a given day.
Yes.
And even when you attempt to bring your calm to his chaos, he can't even co-regulate some days.
Yeah. It's like, no, I can't do this. And we'll sit with him and we'll try different ways. And I'll be honest, there's been times where my emotions has got the better of me, and I'm looking at the other kids, and I'm looking at the other kids wanting to play. Like, I've seen them at the window watching them play, and like, I'd want to scream so loud because it felt just so unfair,
And the quickest way to a mother's heart is through her child.
Yeah. But I have seen him, obviously his confidence with us, our confidence with him, we're growing, we're learning. We know when to push it a little bit. I am obviously grown in my emotional feelings towards things, we're moving past that. I can definitely look at kids the same age and maybe not get that pang that I used to as much. Still hit you out of nowhere, but I don't get it as much. And when he goes in, let's say after not being able to regulate himself, and he goes in and has fun, it is the best feeling in the world to see it. Yeah. You're sitting outside for 20 minutes and he's like, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. And then like the kids will come out to him. They'll be like, Harry, it's in, So I went in the last time, it was Funderland, and I forgot his buggy. And I was raging. So anyway, I went into Funderland and I took pictures of it, right? My head went, take pictures. I got a land of a buggy. I came back out. My mum was like, you're really calm. I wasn't expecting you to be this calm. And I don't know why I was calm this day, because it was pretty bad. And it was like, Taylor was with me. My best friend was with me. Friends are really good as well for including them and trying to support me and him. I have very good friends around me who genuinely want to know about Harry and his needs and will accommodate his needs in their world. Birthday parties, they will always try and do something that is nearly centred around Harry, which is absolutely amazing. But anyway, I showed him the picture and he still wasn't really having it. And I said, look, get into the buggy and see how you feel. He had to go to the toilet. Again, mother's instinct, I knew he had to go to the bathroom. Tell you what, son, I said, we'll go to the bathroom and then we leave. So once I got him in, okay, got him into, I kept saying, you really have to go to the toilet, you really have to go, we'll get you in here and then we leave. He got in, he realised that it wasn't as loud, there wasn't many people there, and he had the best time.
Mm.
He sat with his cousins, he sat with the boys, he had birthday cake with raspberries in it. So when we went up to like the birthday area, right, he's sitting there and he didn't want to sit with me, he sat with the boys. And he was laughing at the boys play fighting. And I was like, wow.
Yes.
You know? So again, it's being able to learn how to navigate that.
Sure. So helping him to push into the edges, but safely.
Yes.
All the time, that stretch, but safely.
Yeah.
Because there's a fine line between stretch and stress.
So that's something that I will use my instinct quite a lot. Not today.
Yeah.
Today. Not today. Today.
You can probably take those lessons into your own life as well. You chatted about feeling a little bit burned out on occasions now in your, in perimenopause, and wondering about finding your motivation and finding some harmony, balance. I always think balance is a challenge, because I think if we expect balance of ourselves, we're never going to get 50-50 of anything. You don't get 50-50 in a relationship. You don't get 50-50 in work hard, play hard. It just doesn't happen. But if you can try and strike harmony, 80-20, 60-40, you're taking some of the pressure off. And if you could bring some of those lovely lessons that you're working on with Harry into your own life, you might let yourself off the hook a little bit.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thanks for that. Yeah. Because he's definitely taught me a lot. Definitely taught me that I can't people please anymore. I have to put myself first for him. I don't have room for the bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
your window of tolerance has narrowed for what isn't absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Because my plate was really, really full, you know. And even like what you said about trying to strike the balance, like me and Terry, our careers changed, you know, we try to walk around them, and every now and again our relationship will struggle around it, you know, and we'll have to like reassess it and go, okay, so we're not spending enough time together because we're starting to argue with each other. We're starting to, you know, that distance is starting to grow, even though, you know, there's a lot of pressure on us. We're working maybe too hard and and we'd have to reassess situations a lot. So I do think as well, like maybe with work sometimes, like let's say if Harry's in school, sometimes I'm like, okay, Erin, you need to have a few hours regulation here yourself so you can be present for Harry when he comes home. Because it is very different.
Learning how to do no thing is quite a task. It's quite a skill.
Oh my God.
When you know that you were in Dancing with the Stars, which we can chat about later, and you have worked in fitness fields all of your life, so you know what it is to set yourself a task. I glean from you, you're quite task oriented, and I'm gleaning as well that you take that from your lovely mammy, who I'd love to speak about in a little while as well, particularly given the very special Sunday we have approaching. But I also think it's very important to give ourselves, whilst we might set an alarm clock to get up, so we're giving ourselves a call to start, we equally need to give ourselves a call to quit. And it's okay to set a call to quit. You can set your clock to say at 7 o'clock today, given the circumstances, I am off duty. Yeah, off duty. And you might decide it's just 1 hour or 2 hours. But if you genuinely know and have your mind set, mindset matters. If your mind is set at the fact that at 7 o'clock, you're off duty for 1 hour, somebody else is going to take care of all of the basic things and the complications that we haven't foreseen, you can teach yourself over a while to do no thing as consciously as you do all of those other things that you're task-oriented to achieve.
Yeah.
It's quite a skill. And we need, I think, to hone that skill as we get older.
I think that's why I love panto. So I do actually the Olympia Theatre panto every Christmas. Yeah. And at Christmas time, so for the month of December, obviously I'll do my BA work and stuff that's scheduled in, but I'm like, can't do anything panto. So it's the 1 month of the year that I allow myself to have no responsibility other than panto. And that is my break.
Mm-hmm.
So I often say 3 shows a day, okay, is a break for me, because it's the one time I'm just fully focused on this and this alone. And I just won't take it like, no, sorry, like Terry's so good around that time, but you know, like everyone else just has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a break for me.
It is, Erin, because task switching, we use the term multitasking a lot, and we often throw it around and say women can and men can't. But actually, I think if you look at the neuroscience of it, very few of us can multitask at all. We might be able to do, I think it's 2 tasks, one very consciously and one quite covertly at any given time. What we're doing is we're task switching better than each other. So some are better at task switching than others. But the point for all of us to remember is that task switching is really tiresome on our energy.
Oh,
so
yes.
when you get to do just panto, whilst it's 3 shows a day and you have to get there in traffic and then you have to negotiate the costume changes and the audiences and the energy and all of the thing. And you also have to have a little bit of reserve in the tank for getting out of the house. Getting out the door is difficult, no matter how organised you are.
Yes.
Getting out the door can be the most difficult part. But then you're just focusing on one thing. So that's the part of it that's light relief for you.
Yes.
So if you know that works, you need to let yourself off the hook, and some other times do that as well.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, you talk about balance. When you do try to do everything, I think certain areas of your life suffer.
Because you're looking for the balance. But you see, balance, that's a word. I always do my little bit of breathing when I hear that word balance. I don't do balance. Balance is for tires. Because the thing is, when you strike for balance, you are subconsciously trying to be 50-50 at whatever it is, whether it's your relationship or your work or your training in the gym or whatever. Who gets 50-50 of anything ever? We don't. But we can do harmony. Perfect harmony, like in an orchestra. Everybody's playing their own little bit at all of the right times, and we've perfect harmony. One bum note will throw it.
Yeah.
So if you have 80-20 with your husband, today he can do 80% of the heavy lifting at home. You can only do 20 because you're going to get your hair done or because you're working, whatever. On another day, he might come in, he's tired, he's got tasks maybe to do at his desk at home before he can engage with family. He might have 40% to give. You said, don't worry, I've got 60. So once we get the 100, wherever we're at, it's the harmony that keeps everything sweet.
And I think that's probably what me and Terry do to keep our relationship while we're under high stress. So we look, I call it the wheel, you know. I think it was before Christmas we looked at it and things were out of sync. And even though we were spending time together, we actually weren't spending quality time together. So I realised that my idea of success and a career would be very much about my family. Okay. So like doing social media, owning my own brand, being my own boss. What that allows me to do is it allows me to provide for my family while having the freedom to spend time with them. So I'm not under any time constraints. You have to be here, here, and here.
There's an element of flexibility.
Yes. Now, I mean, sometimes I think a 9 to 5 would probably be easier, but that is probably where I do it. Also, with my job and my career, I can include Terry in that. So Terry picks and packs our orders. Terry's very much, you know, we'll have him on my Instagram, you know, we're on our TikToks, we'll have a great laugh. We, you know, if I'm going somewhere like on an event or, you know, Terry can drive me. So I probably, because of our circumstances with Harry, subconsciously try to enmesh all that together, right? So I could work, be available for my family and include my partner, because there was no time for date nights. There is no time just for me and Terry. There is no sitting down and relaxing. There's not, you know, my daughter is brilliant, my mom is brilliant, but there's not like all of these babysitters. Also, Harry will need care for the rest of his life, more than likely. So it's not like in, you know, you'd say, well, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, he'll be able to mind himself. So you kind of can keep that in mind and keep going, because you're like, you know, when we retire, we're going to be able to spend some time together. Harry is going to be with us forever. I've made lovely peace with that. And I'm like, he's never going to leave me. You know, it's so good. But also it's important that we make time for each other. So subconsciously, I try to enmesh all that. And that was definitely a little bit of conflict in our relationship until we sat down and I tried to explain to Terry that's what I was trying to build. I was trying to build a career and a foundation for us and our family. And that's why I was doing what I was doing, was I wanted us to be together, you know, and we were together, but it wasn't quality time. It was work.
Yeah, but I think everybody needs, when you're in a relationship with somebody and a romantic relationship that becomes a marriage or a together partnership for whatever period of time, I think we all need to audit it quite regularly to keep it working and working well. Like in work, you're always going to go to the boardroom and have a look at the action plans that need changing around to suit different circumstances, different times. So I actually think it's really healthy. It's not a mark or a benchmark of things not being good in a relationship that you have to go back to the drawing board and check and see what's working for you, what's working for me. I think it's really healthy.
Oh yeah, because things, like you said, things change all the time.
Of course.
Like things are working there and it was really good, but actually we need to switch that up. This isn't, you know, what do they say on Love Island? Like on paper, you know, on paper it's great, but actually in reality it's not. So we have definitely fine-tuned things to help each other, and that's what I kind of love about me and Terry. You know, we evolve together, we grow together, and we kind of know each other. Even though we might fall into like old behaviours or patterns, we kind of know each other at this stage. You know,
you have to have each other's back.
Yeah.
For the longevity hack, you have to have each other's back.
Yeah.
Fondness, and I work with couples all the time, and fondness and friendship is the place to start when you're looking to reinvent your marriage and change things up. And, you know, sometimes people like to say, I'd like to go back to the way it was when things have gone a little bit awry for a while. It's not healthy to go back. Yeah. It's not wise. Why would you bother going back when you can go forward?
And I think as well, like we talked about, you know, women change, but so do men in their physicalities. You know, their physicalities, and they're dealing with that as well. And I think we don't really give space for that either.
Did you hear our interview about andropause?
No.
Oh, you've got to listen to this. We had such fun. Tom McKenna, a fabulous pharmacist from Ballally Pharmacy in Sandyford, was with us a couple of weeks ago, and he gave andropause its moment on the Síle Show. So what Joe Duffy did for menopause and Liveline, Tom McKenna did for andropause on the Síle Show. So it's exactly the same. It's the male version of the menopause. Yeah. And it just hasn't had its moment yet. No. But we're going to take full credit for giving it its moment in Ireland.
We'll give it its moment.
It's exactly
I think,
the same.
Yeah. I think in an ideal world, if we could talk to each other and the different sexes understanding each other. Because I think there's always a battle of sexes, and I think if we could maybe understand each other a little bit more and maybe integrate that even from a younger age as well. You know, because I always remember this nun in school. We must have been doing sex ed or something, because I always remember her coming in and saying, you know, and go easy on the lads as well, because they're going through their own thing. You know, she was a bit
avant-garde for a nun.
Yeah, she was, you know, it was all about our hormones and stuff. And she was like, they're going through their own thing as well. You know, and I thought, wow. And I think if we just maybe learn to understand each other a little bit more.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, every one of us trying to understand ourselves and then understand each other. And it's different, bespoke to the relationship you're talking about. So if you're talking about understanding your brother or your sister, very different to understanding your romantic partner or your friends. And it's just about, I think, that lovely sense of adaptability, asking questions, having conversation, showing up for people, being real, being authentic in all relationships. And I think what you put out, you get back, for sure, in all relationships. So on the subject of which, perfect segue to talk about your lovely mum, given that we've Mother's Day coming up on Sunday. Tell me about mum. She's very special in your life.
She is so special, yeah. My mum would have always been like my best friend, my confidant. She is such a beautiful woman, and very resilient as well. Like I talked about that earlier, you know. Times were different for them back then. Times were very, very different. I'm really sure my mum bought her first house when she was 24, and I think they were the first in the family to buy a house, you know. She'd often look back at that, you know, and she'd talk about it and talk about how they spent all their money on the mortgage and there was very little left, you know, and how they just wanted a better life for their children. How they just wanted, again, to have maybe a better, I think we all want that, right? We all want our children to do a little bit better than we did because we've seen life. I've made mistakes, loads of mistakes, and I still make mistakes. And sometimes I wish I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self not to do that. So I think from a parent's perspective, they're like, okay, so this is where they could do better, you know?
So to some extent, not necessarily trying to live vicariously through your children, but rather to put that old head on the younger shoulders.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way that's relatable to kids, that still lets them have that carefree time that you talked about, perhaps you might have missed out on.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I would have had a really open relationship with my mum. So there was, you know, we would talk about things and, you know, she would say like in her day, that was very unheard of, you know, but she always brought us up that like I could go to her with anything. You know, I always know that she is my number one supporter. She is the one I go to for everything. And things haven't been easy on her either. True, you know, I think, again, it was difficult, especially in the times that they grew up in. But she's so funny, and she actually trains a lot. She's trained in, I'd say, about 40 years, and we go to the gym together, and she lifts heavier than me, and she doesn't moan. She's like, and she's like, I'll go heavier, and I'm like, you know, and me and my daughter were, and I'm moany, and my daughter's moanier, and my mum just gets on with it.
Now that's a story. That's a fantastic story. The 3 generations, the 3 women lifting weights, which we're all supposed to be doing. And the eldest of the 3 is lifting the heaviest and not a peep out of her.
And I won't say how old she is because she will go mad, but she's old enough. Like, and we should be much stronger than her, you know? And it's funny, but she always had that. And I remember as a kid, because we wouldn't have had much money, as in my dad worked really hard and my mum did, but it all kind of went on their mortgage and their house. And again, there wasn't like lots of excess money.
Well, credit wasn't as available then as it is now. We live in a completely different world, and people, you know, by comparison, people didn't stretch themselves as far financially as people are willing to do now. It's a different culture altogether. People wouldn't have had as much debt. They worked really hard to have what they had. And to some extent, you were only as good as next week's wages. You kind of lived hand to mouth, really. There wasn't a lot of money left at the end of the week, but you were very proud of what you achieved.
Well, she would decorate everything herself. So she had these tiles in the house, and she hated the fact that the grout used to get dirty. And she would get down with a tiny little brush and she would paint in between that grout. And she would have, you know, her new cushions at Christmas. And one thing, so initially when I brought out my first range with my brand, Imperfection, it was actually housecoats and pyjamas, because one of my biggest memories at Christmas time was pyjamas and new bedclothes. Yes. So it was a big comfort thing. I always went to my housecoat for comfort. It was like an emotional support blanket. Whether I was feeling good or it was what I used. But when I even looked deeper, it was that memory of how I felt on Christmas Eve getting into my new pajamas and my new bedclothes.
So there's an element of nostalgia about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and of course when Santa Claus is coming, he does notice that the skirting boards are clean and
Yes.
that the chandelier has been taken out of the ceiling and washed to within an inch of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were different times.
Different times.
Cupboards were cleaned out.
Yes. And I do think as well, times are different as well. I think the older generation wouldn't be maybe used to being everything displayed on social media the way it is now. That can be difficult, I think, for them too, because it can be hard. I think the older generation is, don't tell the neighbours anything. And, things were a little bit different back then. Also, my mum always says this as well, and I think this could be right. She said, years ago, Erin, we really didn't know what was going on everywhere. So you're being so overwhelmed with lots of negativity that the anxiety of that alone,
we're over-consuming.
Oh, yeah.
We're over-consuming and we're over-breathing, believe it or not, because we're over-consuming.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just have to breathe more functionally, not to consume so much, because it's going on all around us and it's all data for our body.
Yeah. And then, like keeping up with the Joneses, thinking people are having a better life on social media. And, times were a little bit easier around that too.
Well, different. I would conclude, Erin, different. I think the struggles and the troubles and traumas of then were as challenging for them by comparison as they are for, if you like, us now. All the different generations, and you and I are even different generations. I'm your mammy's age, so I get all of that, and they were different times. And I think you make a very valid point when you talk about the idea of kind of keeping your powder dry. I think that was something that.
Explain what keep your powder. I never heard of that.
So you said, don't, what would the neighbours think, or don't tell the neighbours. So I would have been weaned on a culture of keep your powder dry. And that was, don't let your right arm know what your left arm is doing, this type of thing. And it left you a little bit like the cat chasing its tail. You were in a bit of a spin, particularly if you're a very verbose person. And as I'm chatting with you, I think potentially you are. I think you're a talker. I think you probably talk your way to wellness and talk your way to healing. You're learning to do your breathing. You're on your self-help journey and your self-love journey. And it's all great. And we can be zenned out. And we're still going to need to sit down and have a cup on tea and a chat with somebody who gives a toss to really feel better. Yeah. Connection. For some people, connection is key. For others, time on their own is key. And somewhere in the middle, we probably all meet. So I think the challenge of that generation and then breeding, if you like, that into us, whereas we're now trying to breathe our way out of it, was, keep your own counsel. Did you ever hear that one?
Yeah.
Keep your own counsel.
Yeah.
And therefore we gravitated towards each other around our own kitchen tables. Formica altars all those years ago, the elbows up and chat it all out. And then I think nowadays everything's very visible and very different. And there is, as you say, an anxiety point just waiting to catch any of us in its downward spiral any time, because it's going on all around us all the time. So we need to learn how to, I think, one thing is we need to learn how to unhook. So the call to quit is really important, just doing no thing and doing it professionally. I think that's one great way to manage it. That's the longevity hack. And I think
the boundary. People say I'm not great with my boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries. And what do boundaries mean to you?
What do boundaries mean to me? Maybe not doing something that I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this, or you've hurt my feelings and this is not okay with me. And I might express that and then I might feel guilty about it. And I'm just probably... boundaries wouldn't be probably my great thing. Mm. And it probably comes from being maybe a people pleaser too. Or maybe I would say constantly trying to understand people's side of things. Or being like an empath towards them, So always trying to figure out Because I don't think everything is black and white.
And I wonder, Erin, I don't necessarily think that people pleasing and not understanding people is the thing. I think that's where we go to quite quickly. But if we could just pare that back a little bit, it can usually be more like a rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where we're not so concerned about us pleasing them
That's how
as
we're affected by it.
over anxious about the fact that they're not really pleasing us.
Yeah.
And that's a real trigger for anxiety.
Or if I stand this boundary or I keep this boundary, how will that make me feel? You know, it's actually sitting with that. So it's sitting with the boundary is probably difficult. It's
Maintaining your own boundaries.
Sitting with
yes.
the uncomfortableness of it. It's sitting with this is how I feel and then sitting with the feeling of, oh, how are they going to view me now when I do this?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's pretty complex.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's...
And boundaries are definitely, they're important and they need to be placed. But they need to be audited quite regularly too, because what works as a boundary today and for a period of time in certain circumstances may not work in different circumstances, even with the same people. So there's an element of flexibility, oddly, that we have to allow. We consider boundaries to be a forever statement, more or less like a building that can't be knocked. And I don't think that to be the case. I think, you know, on this imaginary wall, if you like, that is the boundary, it's not to keep people out. It's rather to show them where the door is so that they can come in through that door, but not in other places along the line. And also that you can access the world through that door. So you know where the door is. You know the distance from which you can love somebody and yourself in equal measure at any given time. Therefore, it has to be a little bit flexible sometimes. And I think it's knowing the difference, the nuance of knowing the difference, I think, is the strength in having a boundary.
Yeah, I never looked at it like that. That is good.
It's definitely not a wall to keep people out. We're pack animals. Yeah. There's no value, I don't think, in having a wall so tall that you can never get over and nobody can ever traverse the wall. We need to be available to each other, but when the time is right. And we need to know how to turn our centre away so that then when the time is right, we can turn our centre back.
I also have seen people, because I like observing things as well. I often do see people who have what I would consider as a good boundary, okay? And the people around them, let's say somebody is, we'll say the doer, and somebody who has a strong boundary. So, okay, how the two people are treated in the same circles is so different. So people will expect from the person who will do, and the person who has the boundary, it's nearly like they know, well, I'll just leave them because they're not going to do it, so I'm not going to waste my energy. So I can definitely see that, you know. The person maybe whose boundaries, well, what I would perceive as being a little bit lower and maybe putting other people before themselves, they can be a little bit more wore out by it, you know, because people will just gravitate towards them. The people with the boundary, it's like, oh, I'm not going to ask them, they won't do it. I don't know, have you seen that?
So you make a very valid point, and that comes back then to just person type. You know, your personality is how you think, you act and you feel in circumstances, and that's determining your personal reality, really. So if you want to change your personal reality, you have to change your personality. How do you think, how do you act, and how do you feel about certain things and in certain circumstances? Because that's putting out a vibrational offering.
Yes.
And you are going to get an exact match for your vibrational offering all the time. Fact, not fiction.
And you know, I've often questioned this because, again, that deeper, you know, maybe let's say we're talking about manifestations and I'm like, what is my block? What is it? You know, and it can be fear, it can be something completely different than what it actually looks like. It can be something completely different. But then I've also, lately, it's been coming up for me a little bit, as in, again, just, you know, life and wondering about life. Different people have different experiences growing up. So we often talk about, you know, the mindset and the power of positive thought and what we give out is what we get back. But a lot of people have so much potential and they are so amazing, but they never ever had that support from a young age or that surrounding for them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
While they maybe deeply believed in themselves or didn't deeply believe in themselves, but really wanted to succeed at their dreams, they weren't surrounded by people that gave them that feedback. And we're not talking about adults. I'm going back, let's say, you know,
The formative years.
yeah, like to children maybe. So sometimes I feel a little bit, you know, when we hear about the power of positive thinking, and I'm a huge fan of it, but also not everybody has that experience in life.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has those support systems in life. Not everybody has the same chances. And that's a reality,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's why when somebody makes it at something that maybe they didn't have the support around them, or for whatever reason, no judgment to whoever was around them, it was obviously just the way it was. I think it's very special when somebody makes it at their chosen desired career. You know, I think it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why when we see like maybe actors or actresses or athletes or entrepreneurs who against all odds make it, I think that's so powerful. And I think we really need to like evaluate the fact that maybe, just maybe, there is people out there that have so much potential that don't have that support.
They haven't made it yet. It's
Yeah.
interesting. We talked in the production company here recently about following in social media being such a currency, really. So if you have the following, it opens so many doors. But if you have this potential that you reference and you don't have the following, whether you have the pedigree or the academic backing or the business backing, if you don't have the followers, you just may not, you can knock, but you may not get in. So it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely moment to hold space for the fact that there are probably lots of people in the world around us that might be practicing their law of attraction and wondering why are they not getting forward. And we can't, we can't be so facetious as to say, oh, well, they're not doing it right, or, they need to read Rhonda Byrne's book again and, maybe make some notes. We just have to hold space for there are some things that we just don't understand. Ours is not to reason why. Ours is just to do or die, really.
And I think maybe that's the magic of life. I think that's the magic of the journey. Some things really are out of our control,
Yes, for sure. And when you chat about Harry, and I know I have lots of stories in my own life as well that are similarly challenging, hard to understand. There's no maybe pivotal reason why things would happen to you. You rather have to say, this is happening for me, not to me, in order to just make your peace with it, so that you can progress, so that you don't revolve and that you can evolve and all of these things. And it's lovely just to hold space as, humankind for each other. Kindness. Just hold space, be decent, be kind, do whatever you can. I'm prompted to think actually as you're saying that, and we're talking, you're referencing, there are probably so many people out there who have so much talent and so much potential and they've not been found yet, if you like. They need their break, let's say. And whilst we'll say, isn't it wonderful for those that have pushed through the pain barriers or, the socioeconomic challenges or predispositions to be where they are, they're wonderful. Let's celebrate them. Let's raise them up. Let's raise each other up. And what about those people that you reference that haven't pushed through that brown paper bag yet? What can we do for them? If we decided after today that we'd like, one of the messages coming out of this would be that we would love people to see what they can do to reach back in whatever capacity they have and pull somebody forward, or reach down and pull somebody up, because it's not a tiered thing or a position on the pecking order thing. It's just kindness, really, isn't it? If you can do something lovely, do it.
And again, I think it comes down to maybe where we have got lost a little bit in society, that we don't seem to maybe care as much. The older generation, like my mom's generation, my friends, parents, fathers, you know, some only passed away recently, and he was old enough to be my granddad. But their generation will always say, "And how's your mammy?" You know, they have this concept of, I don't know whether it comes from that generation of a little bit, again, community spirit. They still take time for kindness. And I think it boils down to no judgment on our halves, because we're all so busy. So our cups are full. So we're like, I haven't got time right now. I haven't got time. We're always rushing. We're always racing. We're trying to get from A to B to get kids to da. We're not taking that time. And sometimes
It's a bit individualist, isn't it, nowadays? People
Yeah.
are, they don't intend to be, but everybody is so intently on their own path that they're forgetting the community aspect of everything. And we can't survive without each other.
And when I see, so it's so funny because I work with a pranic healer, Katrin, her name is, she's amazing. And she will do acts of service, or, you know, she never talks about it, but that will inspire me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Chris, who does the Liberty Soup Run. Have you ever heard of this?
I haven't, no.
And you know what? These, like, when you see these people doing acts of service, I see it online, and I'm like, that inspires me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I go, oh, and it makes me stop my tracks and go, oh, I wasn't good this week. I wasn't very kind or charitable, you know, because also sometimes I want to say F the world, and somebody's mean to me, I want to be mean back to them, and busy and whatever. But there is still a lot of special people out there who really are so kind to those people who are in deep need, who are lost, who have lost their way. And I always say, like, they're the earth angels. And it's really important that we try to still do a little bit of that. I don't do enough of it, definitely. But when I see these snippets of people doing that kind of stuff, I'm like, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely. Paying it forward and connecting and caring. Just taking the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, a little bit of delusion is important as well in our world. You know, if we are, as we think, too busy to do something, delude yourself for a minute. If you meet an opportunity to be kind to somebody, spend time, stand and stare, smell the flowers, have a chat with somebody, ask them about their mum, as you said. Be ready to rush off and then realise, oh God, this could... And then just be delusional. I've loads of time. As the Lord made time, he made plenty of it. Try some of that toxic positivity, but for the higher good. Have the chat. You'll feel better for it.
Yeah,
Tea and
definitely.
sympathy.
Yeah. And it's about showing up as well, because I think people will always say that, you know, to me, how do I show up for my friends that maybe their child has a disability or something's going on in their life? How do I show up? And I always say, they'll tell you if you listen. But you got to listen with your heart and your eyes, not always your ears. Because you might have a friend who's going through a really hard time and, hey, can I help you? No, I'm grand. No, I'm grand. No. And I'm like, after 3 weeks of hearing, no, I'm grand. No, I'm going to show up now because this is getting a bit too long. And I showed up and I was like, my friend is on her knees. She wasn't grand.
Yeah.
And I should have showed up sooner, and I shouldn't have listened to her telling me she was grand, because she wasn't grand, you know? And I didn't want to overstep the mark. I was being really careful, you know, because she doesn't like to put burden on people. And I think that comes down as well to us, as, you know, we know everybody's busy. We know everybody has hard lives at the minute. We know people are under stress trying to pay mortgage and the cost of living and kids and jobs and husbands and trying to have sex at least once a week to keep your marriage alive, if that's even a thing, maybe once a month or whatever, you know, sick parents are getting older, so many different balls going in the air, you know, and we don't want to burden other people with things. But sometimes, again, it's like, you got to listen. They will tell you how to show up for them, you know, and how one person wants you to show up for them might be different than someone else wants you to show up for them.
Of course. I actually think it's quite important just when you mention that, not to say to people, you'll tell me what you need, won't you? When somebody is challenged, the last thing they're going to tell you is what they need. It is just, as you say, showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up is the important, just being there.
I think that's really hard for us to do as humans, right? Is to show up for people and just be. That was a big thing for me as well when Harry was diagnosed. Everybody wanted to give me these words of positivity and these words of like, he'd be grand. I hated that. Or God gave us this drug. And I was like, I don't want to hear that. And I remember somebody saying to me, you just want to be listened to. You know, I just wanted somebody to hear how I was feeling, you know, and I'm guilty of that too, trying to fix the problem because I can sit with the uncomfortableness of my friend hurting.
You were choking, Erin, at the time because you could see how long down the road this was ahead of you. You know, if this was a shorter term thing, you had no template for that. You know, this wee baby came into the world and you loved him with all your might and you had a notion in your head as to how this was going to pan out. And your brain is a pattern matching agent. It's looking for predictability. It's looking for something that it knows that it can hook into. And you couldn't see where this was going to be. You couldn't see what school he'd go to, you know, what will happen, how he will progress through, you know, even puberty. All of that's so different. When you think you know the troubles and traumas that are ahead of you when you have children, because it is a job for life per se, but you can to some extent hang up your boots. You can retire a little bit when they get married, get a house, get their kids of their own.
Well, you've already kind of done it per se, as in, you know, like people couldn't understand why I wanted him to make his communion so much and why I was upset at the thought that maybe he wouldn't wear a suit on the day. And I was like, but that was my tradition. That was what I grew up with. That's what my family grew up with, my cousins, my friends, their kids. That is my norm. So I wanted that for my children. That's why I didn't say, I don't want my child to have a communion or a confirmation. That wasn't my choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, again, you know, unless you're choosing to rear your children differently than your, you know, per se community or your life experiences, well, to have no choice is very difficult.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
When that is deep down what you want. Again, I definitely made peace with it, and he wore his communion suit that day and he had the best weekend of his absolute life. But I navigated that. And the one thing with autism is it's so funny because when you think you have it licked, something else happens.
Of course. Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know this one now.
Yeah, for sure. So you just have to keep finding the energy to show up, which is probably why you said there are days when your body just doesn't feel like bouncing out of the bed. It's a sense of just your capacity is low on a given day.
And you don't know what day, you don't know what lies ahead.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, you could have, like I said, one day I've had this where people telling me, and I've had experiences with Harry, you know, where like he will go somewhere and he'll absolutely love it. And then on this day it's a no, you know, and you'll go to the effort, you'll get up, you'll get dressed, you'll go there and then it's like meltdown city, you know, and you're like, oh, so there's very little predictability.
Mm-hmm.
When you go anywhere, you're on high alert, listening for noise, for sound, what's changed, what's not changed, you know, so there's no really, it's very unpredictable.
Yes.
You know,
and it's on demand all the time.
Yeah.
You just don't get that passive opportunity to go off duty, to go off grid.
Yeah. And I often think about like single parents and how they navigate it, because I was a single parent with Taylor, but it really does take me and Terry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really, really does, because it is hard, you know, even down to silly things like medicine. You know, if he's sick, and that's a whole other story. He can't tell you and you're trying to figure it out, and he won't take certain medicines. He actually will projectile vomit even if he's really sick, and it's trying to get the right meals into him. And it's really, really, you know, it's
a big responsibility.
It is a big responsibility.
You're on all the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to be off even if you're being given a break. It's as the mammy, it's hard to be off even if you're being given a break.
Yeah.
So what will you do this Sunday now on Mother's Day? What will be done for you, or what will you do? Will you give yourself a break on Sunday?
So I usually go out with my mum. My mum it's kind of been a tradition really for a long time that the girls always go out and we try to go out and spend the day together. But I always say if I was to ideally do it, it would probably be like just a complete break where I do nothing, because sometimes like getting ready and washed and dressed, and I know I feel like a negative Nancy, but that sometimes feel like more doing for me, where I just want to do nothing. But obviously I love spending time with my mum, because there will be a day where I won't be able to spend Mother's Day with her, so I will spend Mother's Day with my mum. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Every year we go for food, and I don't drink alcohol, but they will, and there'll be music and dancing, and I'll be around my aunties. Well, some of them will be there. So yeah, it'll be a day out for the women.
It will. Divine feminine energy. There's nothing quite like it. Tap into that and tap in hard.
Yeah.
And, do what you're obviously intended to do, Erin. I'm gleaning from you that you love to chat. And I do believe that your energy is a little bit low at the moment. I can feel that.
Yeah.
But you'll bounce back.
Yeah.
You'll bounce back. The very fact that you're somebody who's on a healing journey and who, by the way, doesn't drink alcohol. I didn't know that. So you don't drink alcohol. Is that a choice?
Yeah, that was a choice. I made that probably in my 20s. I did drink again, I think maybe for a while after Harry was diagnosed. And yeah, not for me.
And is that because you just can't do hangovers, or would it be an anxiety thing? Do you feel?
I think probably both. I think the anxiety was really difficult, and I would be quite sick as well. Hangovers,
So an allergy to alcohol.
100% an allergy.
Or the same way you're not going to take petrol out of a tank, like it's the same thing. Ethanol, really.
Yeah.
So you just don't you like to live quite cleanly then?
Well, I don't know about like I don't really like to eat, or I don't really eat that clean, and I wouldn't be. It's just the pros and cons with alcohol just outweighs it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, for sure. I have more people in my clinic recently off alcohol and looking for the support then to do something that locks it in. So they get off it because they decide they can't do any more day ones. Day ones are so challenging to get over. And then you get maybe to day 12 or week 1 or month 1 or whatever. And then they have a relapse as they see it. So clearly they're in pre-contemplation for a long time about kicking the booze. And for whatever reason, they don't. So they have choice fatigue. Will I? Won't I? Will I drive? Will I pretend I'm driving? All of the things that are actually exhausting. And then they make the choice. That's it. I'm done. No more gargle for me. And they feel better. But the circumstance in society sucks them back in. So they come walloping in my door. Help. What can you do? Hypnosis, anything. I've made the choice. I have a month under my belt. Do something for me so that this is locked in, because I can't do. The choice fatigue is exhausting. And then you get to the far side of it and you can really kind of get a helicopter view of your world, and you can see, gosh, if I had to navigate that as a drinker, such a good job I was off booze for whatever period of time before, because if I had to navigate that challenge as a drinker, I'd have been panned out for those 3 days. I wouldn't have made any wise choices. So you're right, the pros and the cons, do the list, the pros and the cons. And it's not for everybody to give it up.
No, and I think I've often said, I think, again, the misconception, like you said, the word allergy. Sometimes when people have one drink, it sets off an allergy inside them and they want more drink. So it's like that bar of chocolate. And once you have that one square, you need to keep going. And even though you might have promised yourself, I'll only have one, I'll only have two, once they have one bit of alcohol and it goes into their body, they have this allergy where it actually sets off a craving inside of them, and then they drink to excess, even though they might have made a promise that they weren't going to do that. So I think that's an element as well that people maybe don't take into factor, again, that chemical reaction going on. And then maybe not having life skills, or coping mechanisms that they've ever learned how to do. So their coping mechanisms would be to have a drink. And I think
it's turning down the noise. I think there are lots of different substances. You can have process addiction or behaviour addiction or substance addiction to turn down the noise. It's people's way. The addiction or the substance or the behaviour of choice is never the problem. It's the solution. until you do the work.
Yes.
Then when you do the work, you don't need it as a solution. So that might then be the person for whom moderation is sufficient. But for some people, abstinence is the only way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's difficult as maybe somebody navigating that, which one you are, you know.
That's where therapy comes in.
Yeah, and I also think as well that it's really important, I always say, play the full tape. Because as humans, when we're going on a night out, we, you know, especially if you are maybe prone to having a little bit too much on a night out, we play the tape where it's fun, because the start of the night is always fun. It's brilliant. It's great crack, and it's da 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 da, and you get the relief, and it's so amazing. But play the full tape. Play to the end of the night. Play the next morning. Play the hangover. Play the anxiety. Not everybody gets it. I've seen loads of people who don't suffer with that, but I have seen people who do suffer with it, you know?
I think most people do, Erin. I just think some can handle it better than others, given their temperament. I think temperament needs to get its place at the table at this stage in the conversation, because there are people who will have the fear, as we call it. It's anxiety.
The fear, I know. Yeah, we had no clue what the fear was years ago.
But it's not the fear. Actually, it's anxiety. You see, you can have anxiety without fear. That's, you know, that's perceived fear. What it actually is I can't remember what happened. And for lots of very genuine reason, your brain just will not allow you to access memory.
Do you know what I read somewhere? Now, I don't know if this is true, so don't take me on fact on this. And I thought it was, wow, when people black out, they actually say that it's your body ODing.
Yeah, but you can black out with your eyes wide open.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean, in a blackout, as in like blacking out, not remembering anything, even though they're purchased. Yeah. But it's actually you're an OD in your body, so your body has cut off.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, I never looked at it like that. And like what you said, it's how people handle the emotions. People could outdrink me, outparty me, out everything me, but my emotions the next day. And I used to envy those people who were able to do that, because like I've often said this, I gave up drinking, I worked on myself, and I'd done, elements of healing when it wasn't cool.
Mm-hmm.
When it really, really it was frowned upon. I just came into the generation where we're not talking about our feelings, and now all of a sudden we're going into this space, and now I look at the young people and they're a lot more open to it, a lot more aware of it, but it definitely wasn't cool when I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I battled with that a lot, but again, I knew maybe there was something better for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just
another way to be, another way to show up, not necessarily
just
following the
anymore.
madding crowd. Yes.
Yeah, I just didn't want to hurt anymore.
That's a rejection sensitivity dysphoria, Erin,
I'm going to
definitely.
Google that when I go home. What have I got now?
Yeah.
Add that to my list of traits that I have.
But I say that as a very emancipating awareness. So when we are highly anxious at the thoughts of not being well received wherever we go.
Okay.
So people's opinions of us mattering so much, and just not, sometimes being too much. Were you ever like too much for even your own family, I'm
always too much.
Well, there you go. So then you're wired to be too much for society, because whatever we experience in our first 7 years is exactly how we'll be. We will repurpose those neural pathways for the rest of our life until we do the work.
Wow.
So if in your first 7 years, you made a lovely point earlier of the fact that you loved to
do shows.
Yeah. Okay. So, but ironically, you were quite concerned about what people thought about you. But when you were in character, you could be the verbose, outward focused person that you actually felt you were intended to be. Then when you'd come down off the little stage, even if it was only the chair in Nana's kitchen, you were very quiet and shy and perhaps concerned about what people were saying. So I think that what we learn as we go through life is to repurpose those neural pathways to become more self-contained and self-assured, and not in an egoic way. Yeah. There's no point in doing anything, even spiritual egoism. You can get to a point on your spiritual path where all of a sudden then you spill over into thinking you know it all spiritually. Anywhere we do that, the wheels have come off again, and we need to go back to centre.
Do you know one thing I've learned as I got older? I know fuck all. And when I think I know something, or I think I'm never going to do that, guess what? God is going to show me, girl, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the maturest thing that ever happened to me in my life, because I'm like, I actually really know fuck all.
Yeah, we're all the same. None of us do. We don't know anything about anything. And in that place of conscious incompetence, we can survive because we don't reckon that we have to be the boss of it or in the driver's seat all the time. Erin, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I can't bring this to an end without letting you tell us about your gorgeous Gansey and all of your other lovely products.
Oh, well, this is my Imperfection by Erin. This jumper was actually inspired, and my whole collection was inspired by the need for people to wear something and feel a feeling from it. So we have, our first collection was called Strength, because anytime anybody wore it, I wanted them to feel strong. We had the Love collection, so when they put it on, that they felt loved. Because again, that self-soothing, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of assurance, but to give it to yourself. Then we went into our jumpers. I was drawn to the pink today because this is for confidence and self-assurance. And our logo is Love Needs No Words, because my son is nonverbal, but I know that he speaks to me at such a deeper level. I always explain that to the kids. I'd say, if you wanted to show your mammy that you loved her, but you weren't allowed to show her, what would you do? They kind of think. The same with excitement. If your favourite football team won, what would you do? You can't say anything. You can't use your words. What would you do? And they'll think, and I'll say, well, that's what Harry does. So he expresses it in a non-verbal communication. So that's where Love Needs No Words came into play. And I kept it on the left-hand side, so you can touch your heart and that you know that you're loved. And the Imperfection, there's a love heart between the M and the P, because what people were telling me was an imperfection per se. I wanted people to re-look at it, and go, oh, well, where the love heart is, it actually means I'm perfection. So what people will see as imperfection really is I'm perfection. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's about loving yourself in all areas. I want to be healed and deep and spiritual, and I love that side, but I love Botox and I love Chanel handbags and I love Range Rover. So embracing your imperfections, but also allowing the fact that you might want to do those things to maintain yourself. And again, nothing is black and white. I want to love myself as I am, but I also want to maintain a fresh, youthful face, And I think that's the contradiction of me and who I am as a person. And I'm okay with that.
So navigating both as safely as you can and showing up every day for your lovely self to be the best of you on whatever given day and however you're feeling on said given day. That's the best that you can do. And it's all that you can expect of yourself, really, if you want to stay healthy and well.
Yeah.
Well, Erin, I have had the best conversation. Thank you so very much. I hope you have an amazing day on Sunday. You deserve to have. And hello to your lovely mammy and your sister and whomever else, all those other divine feminine energy beings that you surround yourself with on the day.
And you too have the best day.
Gur míle maigat. And there you have it. A journey through the lens of entrepreneurship, independence, and the messy, sometimes fascinating, although very often unpredictable world of social and digital media, content creation, partnerships and collaborations. In today's world, followers and visibility can feel like currency. The more you have, the more doors may open. Influence can grow overnight, but it can be fleeting. It's not guaranteed. So we really do need to know how to tame our vanities, because what goes up must come down. We need to know how to anchor the ever-expanding metaphorical bunch of balloons that are kind of blown up by attention and ego with a triangular weight as such of self-awareness, humility, and reflection. Staying true to yourself, making conscious choices about what you create, what you share, and with whom you engage. Now that has lasting value in a world of constant noise. And how do you measure integrity, authenticity, or goodwill even? Some things are not for sale, but they do seem to have the greatest value, to some anyway, in this ever-changing world of ours. And so, dear listeners, your task for this week is to reconnect with your authentic self. Who are you when no one's watching? What are your core values, and are you living in alignment with those? Can you recognise and uphold boundaries, as we discussed today, privately and professionally, in ways that protect your energy and your purpose? And remember too that if you bend your own boundaries, you can't expect others to respect them. Everything we consume nowadays, our food, our media, our messages, our relationships, they're all shaping us. So in a world of overconsumption, would it be wise, I wonder, to consider the idea of spiritual autophagy? Just to pause every now and then, to process, shed what no longer nourishes your soul, the essence of you as such, and cultivate what promotes growth and wisdom in its stead. Step back every now and then, reflect, and let your inner compass guide your daily choices. Everything you engage with intention. And for goodness sake, see people, hear people, and value people. There's an ineffable generosity of spirit in all of us that's invaluable and limitless. And when you can access that, you know that you're in alignment with your truest self, your authentic self. And from that vantage point, everything you do will be for the higher good. And that, in my humble opinion, dear listeners, is the kind of influence and influencer that endures. And so it is.